Gaurav, I have to start, Gaurav. I know because you're going through so much. I'm sitting here in London and I've been watching the events in Singapore and how you've adjusted and how your team has adjusted and hearing reports from our group. It's extraordinary. It's an extraordinary time. And actually, and this is your last year. And all of these things bring me to, I just have to ask you, I know this is supposed to be an interview with me, but how are you?
Oh, you're so sweet. Just everything was going swimmingly until 14 days ago. And now it's all happening again. And this is actually much, much harder than it was in 2020.
Yeah. But the only thing possible in moments like this is innovation, right? I mean, you have an amazing team and the ability to adjust. And I've been impressed from the beginning with you. You have a combination of both solidity and flexibility, which not many people have. So, feeling even across the many oceans between us, your good spirits, your sense of enthusiasm despite the circumstances. But the innovation, I think, has certainly led to our companies in the creation of Three Sisters to innovate. And you're having to innovate. We're all having to innovate together. But it turns out in the history of the world that the great things happen in the worst moments when humans have to innovate. So maybe we're making the future together.
I actually completely believe that. And one of the things I tell the team here is for the decades that I have done this, this is probably the most emotional roller coaster I have ever been on. And
Yeah.
but once we get through this, and we will get through it, we will be able to do anything.
It's so true. It's so true. I mean, it's such a fiction anyway that anything is controllable, right? We go through our lives and we think, yes, we're making these plans, we'll make them happen. But this is actually what it's all about. It's about being able to, well, what is it? The art of life is the art of adjustment, and we're adjusting constantly to the blows that are coming at us. So, it's great to connect in this way, even though, despite the circumstances we're in. So, God bless
So,
you.
and you, it's so lovely to see you again. So we had a meeting about this project, I think 4 years ago in your office
Yes.
with
Yeah.
Nelson and Mia. I have two questions for you. One is that process for you about collaborating with 9 years over
Yeah.
who you've known for a long time, on how we got to 2020, and then when 2020 got cancelled, and then we started having conversations about how do we adapt in 2021.
Yeah.
That journey of the last few months that got us to, I will preface this by saying I went and watched the dress rehearsal yesterday. I loved it. I just thought in everything that you just said about how do we innovate and how do we adapt, because obviously my dream was to have you here with us.
Yes.
And
My dream too.
which we will make happen one day. But when it became apparent that you and your team, or a significant number of your team, couldn't be here, you guys have innovated in such a spectacular way. And I would love you to answer those two things and tell people watching this about that process, about that journey, and how we got to today.
Well, it's a big journey, and I'm going to go back to your first question, which is about why we would do this, why we embarked together. And I've had SITI Company is nearly 30 years old, and 9 years has been with us for a significant part of that, a third of that time. For me, the theater is different from any other art form. Is it asks the question, how are we getting along? And when you go to see a play, you're not only seeing a play about a group of people trying to get along from usually a state of crisis. Three Sisters is a good example, Oedipus Rex, Death of a Salesman. It's all about a society that's falling apart and trying to put itself together again. But at a certain point, I thought, after we had been together as a company for a while, I thought, well, what are we doing? we get along really well as a company, and we can make work in which we function together and can create a kind of model society to propose. And I started thinking, what's really interesting is to take this ensemble of actors and meet other ensembles and see if we can create a world with the other, if you know what I mean. And we began a series of projects where we worked with Bill T. Jones and his company, or we worked the Martha Graham company, so different companies coming together, or Bang on the Can, we worked with them, Anne Hamilton as a visual artist. So when this project came up, it made a lot of sense to work with a company that is working in Singapore and us in the States, and come together and see how we might get along. And that so when the audience comes to see a play, they're seeing not only the story of a group in Russia who are longing to go to Moscow and everything's always compromised, they're also looking at a group of people who are attempting to meet. And that happens not so much, as they say, in the prefrontal cortex of the brain, it happens in a deeper part of the audience. And so they're actually experiencing two groups coming together to make one social system that is ultimately a proposal of how we might in the world function better. So that seemed to be a great genesis, these two companies coming together. But now, and when you describe seeing the dress rehearsal last night, it's exciting. First of all, your enthusiasm makes me very happy. But we never dreamed that we would have to make this relationship or make this social structure using so much technology and using two different places. So in a sense, the attempt remains the same. What we are doing, what we're trying to do, what we are attempting remains the same. The means has changed radically. And the means is, when I think of Darren West, who really took on the whole aspect of the video, even though he's the sound designer, but he took on the responsibility of taking over this video world and using his tools to bring us together across the oceans. We couldn't have dreamt this, but again, the why of it remains the same. And I think probably, what we have achieved together is maybe more interesting than what we could have achieved if we were all together. I don't know. I hate to say that even because I hate Zoom.
There's an element of that is true. I mean, obviously having you all here and doing it in person, we are a live medium, right? I mean, having everyone on that stage is the ideal. But given that is not possible, I think what SITI in 9 years have achieved is amazing. And I think people are going to look to this production as inspiration going forward. Well, at least until hopefully we're rid of this thing.
But we both want to be rid of it, but at the same time, we've probably learned how to connect with each other across the planet in more profound ways. That's huge. I mean, I do not like performances on Zoom. I find it's usually too much about expressing myself as opposed to what we're doing together. But I do find that we are probably going to use some of these tools into the future. And part of it, not so much in just how we make theater that we're showing, but how we meet new audiences and how we bring them into the process, how we might bring them virtually into a rehearsal. These things, I think our minds are changing about how we can relate to one another.
Both companies desire to actually throw out the rule book and create something new is exactly what this festival is about. So I'm so honored and delighted to have you as part of it. And I cannot wait to have you here in person one day.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And what you're saying makes me think of something actually Peter Brook said 100 years ago. He said, not really 100 years, clearly he's not 100 yet, but he said, hold on tightly, let go lightly. And that combination is beautiful, because if you just let go, nothing exists. But if you just hold on, everything becomes sterile. So that notion of hold on tightly, let go lightly is the paradox that we have to live in. And I hope, as we keep saying again and again in this little talk between you and me, I hope we have learned that.
I've spoken to Nelson and Mia, and obviously I'm updated on the process on this end. And I was just curious about how was it for you guys putting this piece together from across the ocean?
Well, I think it was both exciting and terrifying because the actors in SITI Company very consciously chose to do theater and not film. And we suddenly were making a film, but making it in a way in which would be open enough to have a conversation, really have a conversation with people in real time. So I think the choice that we made to go upstate into the Catskills to my house, which is where the film part was shot, in my 1850s farmhouse in the Catskill Mountains,
Wow.
was played a great role because in a way, Masha always says to Moscow, but it turns out that where the family lived was like the suburbs of Moscow. So you realize, oh my goodness, it was just a longing that we all have. We long to be where we're not. So the combination of the countryside, the old house, trying to make connections, longing to be somewhere where we're not, so close and so far, all had an effect on how the actors play, how Darren made the film. And it is a film which is now theater. So it was both scary and exciting. I know that a number of the actors said at the end, they said, well, we did what we do. It's not totally new. We came together in a way that we had to make adjustments, but I think it was a positive experience in the end, despite all of every 2 days COVID tests for the Actors Equity Union. I mean, the restrictions were just monumental. But again, the warmth came through and the emotionality, I think, came through. So, okay.
I speak to so many people who around me who are now like, they just have this longing to travel. They have this longing to go out. They have this longing to leave. And, we live on a small island. It's completely understandable. But I'm just thinking, yes, but enjoy the moment that you're in and where you are. And so actually the play actually has a lot of resonance at the moment.
Gosh, here in London, where I've been for much of the COVID period, all of the restaurants were shut down. And then suddenly, about 3 weeks ago, people were allowed to go to restaurants and pubs outside, not inside. Nobody was allowed inside. And if you could see going through London, people sort of crammed onto the corners outside of these buildings, having beers, talking, that sort of longing to communicate with one another, which it was palpable to feel. And now slowly, the restaurants are opened with distancing, but we're starting to forget already. And the theater is so much about remembering, to remember what we're always on the verge of forgetting. So I hope, again, I keep saying that this is a wake-up call for us.
I hope so. I think we've all learned, but I just wanted to say thank you. It's been an honor to have you as part of my final festival.
Well, Gaurav, I have to actually thank you, and I'm really on behalf of SITI Company, because your belief in us means more than you can imagine.
Thank you. Thank you, my dear. I look forward to seeing you soon.
Me too, you.